got to ask you, is it, the finance minister came out and a couple of weeks ago, and it seemed like she had an epiphany that said, for every dollar spent, we need to find a dollar of saving. We've all heard that. That's our leader, Pierre Poilievre, saying, like you said. I said it was peer pressure that made her say that. But a government that spent $110 billion before the pandemic, spent $500 billion during it, which, like you said, 40% or around $200 billion wasn't even COVID related. Are they to be believed that they've had this epiphany that now they're going to all of a sudden be fiscally responsible, which, by the way, I don't know what epiphany the prime minister had. He's finally said the words fiscal responsibility. Is this a government that's to be believed?
That's a really good point, Jazz. And it's not only a question of can they be believed, but can they actually do it? I mean, they've spent 7 years spending money, and then they're going to wake up some morning and say, "Oh, we're not going to spend as much money." Easier said than done. If you've, it's like exercising a muscle. If you haven't exercised the fiscal discipline muscle, where it atrophies, it goes away. They're not even used to thinking that way. Whereas, quite frankly, under the Harper conservatives, we did spend money, but we also exercised fiscal discipline. And so we were used to making the trade-offs that are necessary. If we have to spend more, fine. Let's spend more in a certain area, but let's spend less in another area. We were used to making those kinds of very important fiscal discipline decisions. And these Liberals have never had to make those decisions because quite frankly, Mr. Trudeau never saw it as a priority. And, here's a fellow that said that the budget would balance itself. Remember that famous line from 2015. So I just even if Chrystia Freeland has the best of intentions, and I'm not saying one way or the other, but even if she did, I'd have to believe it. I'd have to see it to believe it, is what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely. And, a comment that you just made about, Mr. Trudeau has said that the, budget would balance itself. It seems like they're very out of touch with the reality of Canadians. Today we see food bank usage at the highest it's ever been. 1 in 5 Canadians now are starting to skip meals. We see credit card debt at record highs. I mean, we saw credit card debt really high in around 2008, but today it's even worse. With what's going on. 1 1/3 of the food bank users are children as well. In a country like Canada, many, like myself, immigrants came to this country for a better life. And it's hard to think that this amazing country that was built on sacrifices is in the state it is today. And the finance minister gave some financial advice to Canadians by saying, hey, you know what? Things aren't all that great. Why don't we start with cutting our Disney Plus subscriptions? And to an average Canadian who may not even be able to afford that today, it seems like they're very out of touch. Can you touch on that and maybe talk about the difference between a real fiscal responsibility that we saw during the Harper time and what we're seeing today?
Well, they certainly have to lead by example, and they're getting into a little bit of trouble. That $6,000 hotel room and other things. It's hard to take them seriously about fiscal discipline when things like that happen. And I remember making decisions like okay, I'm in Washington D.C. on an official business. I'm going to use Uber. I'm not going to use a limousine. Things like that, because I was always thinking how I have to always keep the trust of the taxpayer because I'm the guy that's cutting budgets, right? So it's things like that. You've got to live by example in politics, Jazz. You know that better than most, and it's a never-ending challenge and responsibility. So getting that kind of advice from the finance minister about Disney Plus. First of all, you're targeting a company. Why mention it was Disney Plus? I didn't
That's
get
right.
that aspect of it. And secondly, people found it, quite ridiculous when they're facing food banks and facing massive transportation costs to get to their job because of the price of gasoline or whatever it is, that somehow $13 a month advice is going to make a difference in their lives.